Hello, grade 9-10 English students. One of your classmates asked me if I could do a little review of scenes 2 and 3 of The Merchant of Venice, since several of you were not able to be in school this week. So I am going to do a little review. I'll recap Act 1, Scene 1 as well, even though you were in class for that one, and then we'll talk about Scene 2 and Scene 3. So Scene 1 is set in Venice. So remember, this is set in Italy, and it's called The Merchant of Venice. And sometimes the scenes alternate back and forth a little bit between Venice, which is the busy city streets where a lot of marketplace things were happening. Antonio is the merchant that the book is titled after. And so the first scene is in a busy city street type of setting, and then the second scene is going to be in Belmont, and that's where the beautiful and rich Portia lives, and that's in more of a countryside scene. And so Shakespeare is juxtaposing city life with country life. Okay, so scene 1, we were introduced to Antonio, who's the rich merchant, and found out that he is depressed and he doesn't know why. His friends suggested maybe you're worried about your ships and maybe they're going to get lost and you'll lose your money. And he said, no, it's not that, and it's not because he's in love. And then we're introduced to Bassanio, who is in love. He's in love with Portia, who is rich and beautiful, and especially rich, and he wants her money. And he obviously has fallen in debt to Antonio in the past, and Antonio doesn't mind. He loves his friend, and he's willing to loan him more money. And Bassanio is trying to justify himself, saying, like, look, I know I lost some money before, but if you loan me some more, I can find out where the problem was, and I can get more. And once I marry Portia, then all her belongings will be mine, and I can pay you back. So Antonio is quite happy to loan money, but unfortunately all his wealth is tied up in his ships, so he can't actually get any money for him at that moment. But if Bassanio goes around Venice and uses his credit for leverage, then he should be able to borrow some money based on Antonio's credit. Okay, scene 2, it's in Belmont at Portia's house, and we're introduced to Portia, the beautiful and rich Portia, and Nerissa, her servant. And similarly to the first scene where Antonio is talking about how depressed he is, Portia says, so Antonio said, in sooth, I know not why I am so sad. It wearies me, you say it wearies you. Portia says, by my troth, Nerissa, my little body is aweary of this great world. And Nerissa said, well, you have so many good things. Maybe you have too much stuff. Maybe you are too rich, and maybe it would be better if you didn't have quite so much. If you were kind of an average sort of person, they use the word mean, which means average, you wouldn't be so miserable, because if you're poor, you're not happy. If you're really rich, people aren't happy. So Portia says, yes, that's true. And Nerissa said, well, you should try to follow my advice. And Portia said, if it were as easy as to know, if to do were as easy as to know what were good to do, chapels had been churches and poor men's cottages princes' palaces. So she's saying, well, it's much easier to know what the right thing is to do than it is to actually do it. It's easier to teach 20 people the right thing to do than to do that thing yourself. And then we find out in the course of her conversation that her father, who has died, has set up in his will a system by which Portia will get married. So the will states that men who would like to marry Portia, which is a lot of people because she's so rich and beautiful, they can come and they can try to choose between 3 caskets or 3 little chests or boxes, and if he chooses the right one, then he will get to marry her. And so you can choose a gold casket, a silver casket, or a lead casket, and then he will open it up and see if he wins or not. And Portia is not very happy, so a lot of men have been coming and kind of checking out the situation, meeting Portia, seeing how rich she is, and deciding if they want to play the game or not. And it doesn't say this at this point, but we come to find out that if a man does choose to try his luck, he has to agree that if he loses, he will never marry for his whole life. So he has to really be committed to marrying Portia or be committed to wanting her money. It's a big chance to take that if he wins, he gets her. If he loses, he can never get married to anyone in his whole life. So through this scene, we find out that a bunch of men are visiting Portia, and she really doesn't like any of them. So Portia and Nerissa kind of trash talk each of these guys. Nerissa's suggesting, okay, well, what about this guy? And Portia's making fun of them all. So the first one is too into his horse, and it's just a bit, I don't know, maybe too country-like. He's just obsessed with his horse. And then the next one is too sad. The next one seems to have no personality. He just takes on everyone else's personality around him. And then the next guy, the guy from England, she doesn't like him. She doesn't like the way he dresses. She doesn't like the Scottish guy. She doesn't like the German guy because he's an alcoholic. And, okay, so she doesn't like any of them, but then she finds out that Nerissa said they've decided they would like to marry Portia, but they don't want to take their chances on the game. So Portia is glad that they're all leaving. And then Bassanio comes up, his name is mentioned, and Portia and Nerissa are saying, yeah, he's a good guy. He's kind of, I like him. And then we find out that the Prince of Morocco is coming, and Portia is hoping that that she will like him much more than the other guys. Okay, so that's the end of that scene. And then scene 3 is back to Venice, so it's back to a busy space. And Bassanio has found someone who he is asking to borrow money for on Antonio's credit. So this is Shylock, and he is the antagonist of the play. He's a Jew, and he's considering, should I loan you this money? Should I not? And in the conversation, it comes out that Shylock hates Antonio, number one, because he's a Christian, and Shylock is a Jew. But more importantly, he hates him because Antonio lends out money for free, and he brings the interest rate down. So there's a lot of racism and prejudice against Jewish people at this time, and through the course of history, there often has been. And Jewish people often were only allowed to be money lenders. And so the way that Shylock made money was by loaning money and then getting it paid back with interest. And so if Antonio is loaning out money for free to people, then this brings down the rates of how much Shylock can charge, because if he's charging interest, no one will want to borrow from him. And so Antonio is his enemy because of his religion and culture, and then also because he, more importantly in Shylock's mind, is because he's hurting his business, basically. Okay, so Shylock says, do you know what? I'm going to be really nice to you. I'm not going to charge you any interest, but just for fun, let's make a little... Just for fun, let's make a little deal that I will loan you 3,000 ducats for 3 months, and if you don't pay me back, then I will take a pound of your flesh. So, of course, if you take a pound of someone's flesh, then it means you're killing them. So, Bassanio is not happy with this, and he says, Antonio, no, don't sign this deal. You can't risk your life for me. And Antonio says, it's not going to happen. Within 2 months, so a whole month before I have to pay the money back, I expect that when my ships come in, I will get thrice 3 times the value of this bond, which means 3 times the amount of money, which is 3. So he thinks within 2 months he'll have 27,000 ducats. It'll be no problem to pay back the 3,000, which he owes a month later after that. So he's not worried. It's not much of a risk for him at all. And Shylock says, I'm only doing this out of kindness. I'm not charging you any interest. And Bassanio says, I like not fair terms and a villain's mind. So this sounds really fair and kind. but Shylock is so evil. How can we trust him? There must be something wrong here. And we can see that not only does Shylock hate Antonio, Antonio also hates Shylock because Shylock said, "You have spit on my beard, you have kicked me, you've called me a dog." So obviously, and Antonio says, "Yeah, and I would do that again. I just want to borrow some money from you, but we're not going to be friends." So this raises lots of issues about racism, which we'll talk about as the play goes on, and what was Shakespeare's intent here, and so we'll have a good time discussing those things. But that's the basic synopsis of the first act of the play. So we are introduced to all the major characters. We know quite a bit about their personalities already. Antonio is older, he's rich, he's a bit depressed. Bassanio is young, he's impulsive, he's in love. Portia, young, she's not happy because her father has died, and also she feels trapped. She knows she's going to have to marry someone who she can't choose for herself. And then we have some supporting characters, like some servants and friends around, and we find out that Bassanio is going to borrow the money through Antonio, who is borrowing the money from Shylock, who is he evil and greedy, or is he kind? We don't really know. And yeah, so email me if you have any questions, and for the quiz, just be prepared to know some basic information about the play, about the scenes, about the characters, what's happening, and then so that would be multiple choice questions and short answer, and then also be able to analyze 3 out of 4 quotes. So some of the quotes that I refer to, those are possible ones. Something like, if I said, "In sooth, I know not why I am so sad, it wearies me, you say it wearies you," then you would say, this is Antonio speaking to his friends, Salarino and Solanio, but you don't necessarily have to say their names, and just say that he's depressed and he's not sure why. And yeah, so that's how you'd analyze that quote. Okay, I'll see you guys in class tomorrow.